السنة مثل سفينة نوح، من ركبها نجا ومن تركها غرق.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. As to what proceeds, barakallahu fiqh, today is our fourth lesson, corresponding to the 29th of Jamad al-Akhir, corresponding to the 17th of March 2018, 1439 after Hijrah. In our last week's lesson, we studied the biography of Shaykh al-Islam, Sh ThānāʻAllāh Allah Amritsari rahmatullah. Many of you are aware of the enemies of the Salafi da'wah, and the enemies of the Salafi da'wah are many in England. From amongst them, on social media, there is a YouTube channel that has been set up by the Deobandis, known as the Hanafi Fiqh channel, with the objective of disgracing, humiliating, mocking and refuting the Salafis of the UK. From amongst these people, there is a Jahil Murakkib by the name of Yasir, who calls himself Yasir al-Hanafi, or we call him Yasir al-Jahmi, who has made it his objective to belittle Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, and his status is like the one who comes to Makkah unknown to the people and urinates in the well of Zamzam so that he may be known amongst the people. This man's status is no different from the man who comes to Makkah and urinates in the well of Zamzam. The reason why I started mentioning the Hanafi Fiqh channel is because what I am going to discuss in our today's lesson is directly related to the doubts that are brought forward with regards firstly to the Salafis, so that the Salafis be confused and have doubts with regards to their scholars and their manhaj and their madhhab, and then to satisfy their own people who are accepting the Salafi da'wah, which has scared the Jahmis. And I hope that you understand what I am saying. Are you all with me? First of all, I say that it is not permissible for my students to watch any of these recordings or lectures that can be found on the Hanafi Fiqh channel without my consent. The reason why I mentioned this Hanafi Fiqh channel is to warn you against it, not to encourage you to go and listen to what is being said about the Salafis. Last week I mentioned to you in the biography of the Shaykh, I mentioned that the Shaykh studied Hadith and its sciences with two of the greatest Hadith scholars of their time, the blind Shaykh Abdul Mannan al-Wazir Abadi and his Shaykh al-Imam al-Muhaddith al-Shaykh al-Sayyid Nadir Hussain al-Dahlawi rahmatullah alayh. Do you recall this? And we know that these two giants were the ones who spread the Madhhab of al-Hadith and their fuqaha, the jurists, which was to hold on to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and not to restrict yourself to any one madhab by respecting the great scholars and the A'immah and benefiting from the ijtihadat. Do you recall this? I mentioned this last week. Shaykh al-Islam al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayhi studied with these two sheikhs. Do you also recall that I mentioned that Shaykh al-Islam al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayhi studied in Darul Deoband and graduated from Deoband, and he studied in Mazahir al-Ulum in Saharanpur and graduated from Mazahir al-Ulum in Saharanpur, and he studied in Kanpur with a famous scholar in Kanpur and graduated from his institution. Are we clear up to here? Shaykh al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayhi, he studied al-Mantiq, which is rhetoric, and falsafa, which is philosophy, and aqaid, certain books of Aqeedah, in the madrasa of Deoband. Are you listening to what I'm saying? Shaykh al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayhi studied the Ash'ari Maturidi Aqeedah, and he studied the Tariqatul Mutakallimin in the madrasa of Deoband. And because of this, the Shaykh, he fell into error. The Shaykh, he wrote two tafsirs of the Quran. I mentioned this last week. He wrote Tafsir-e-Sanai in the Urdu language, which is in 4 volumes, big volumes, and if they were to be published in the normal size volume, it would reach about 10 volumes. And he wrote a tafsir of the Quran in the Arabic language, which is known as Tafsir al-Quran bi Kalam Rahman, which has been published by Darul Salam in the Arabic language. With regards to Darul Deoband, when the Shaykh studied there, we know that the Deobandis claim to be Hanafis in fiqh, and they claim to be upon the madhab of the Asha'ira and Maturidiyya in Asma wa Sifat, and they have an inclination towards the madhab of the Mu'tazila, and in Suluk they are upon the way of the Sufis, and so forth. So the Shaykh did not study the books of Aqeedah with the scholars of Hadith. Am I making sense to what I'm saying? And because of this, so the first thing we understand is that the Shaykh did not study the books of Aqeedah with the ulama of Ahlul Hadith. Secondly, he studied the books of Aqeedah with the scholars of Deoband upon the madhab of Deoband. Thirdly, the Shaykh became influenced with their Aqeedah, and he thought that the Aqeedah of the Asha'ira and Maturidiyya was Tariqul Haqqi was Sawab, was the way of the truth and was correct. And this was not known to the scholars of Hadith. Whereas when he was amongst the Ahlul Hadith, the likes of Nadir Hussain Dehlawi rahmatullah alayhi, and that which was apparent was to cling to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Are you with me with the problem that we have so far? What is being discussed with regards to the great Shaykh, the Salafi Shaykh. So the Shaykh studied Aqeedah in the madrasa of Deoband. He did not study the books of Aqeedah with the ulama of al-Sunnah. Number 3, he became influenced with the Aqeedah of the Ash'aris and Maturidis because they were philosophical and rhetoric arguments. And the Shaykh, as we know, he was an expert and had entered the arena of debating with the different sects as well as the enemies of Islam from different religions, Hindus and Christians. So the scholars did not know of this position of Abu al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayh until the Shaykh wrote his tafsir in the Urdu language and the Arabic language. When he wrote these tafsirs, these two tafsirs of the Quran completely, he made ta'weel of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he writes these two tafsir, Tafsir al-Thana'i in the Urdu language and Tafsir al-Qur'ani bi Kalami Rahmani in the Arabic language. And when he came to the sifat, the attributes of Allah, he made ta'weel upon the Madhhab of the Ash'ari and Maturidi. And he published these two books and sent them to the scholars. And the scholars, they read them. And when the scholars, when they read them, they realized that the Shaykh Abu al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari was not upon the way of the Salaf when it came to the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are you following what I'm saying? Before I go any further, there's a very important point I would like to highlight. And that point is the impermissibility of studying in the institutions of the people of Bid'ah. If the likes of Abu al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayh, with his great oceans of knowledge and studying with the great Imams of his time, was not saved from the influence of the people of Bid'ah, then how will the people of today be saved from the influence of Ahlul Bid'ah? And you will see now that what happened after his two tafsirs were released, what position the scholars of that time took with him. So from this incident, it becomes clear to us that the mujalasa, sitting with the people of innovation, benefiting from the people of innovation, the asal of it, and in England it is completely impermissible. Whether it's the Arabic language, whether it's fiqh, whatever subject you want to say. And these fools, these half-doctors, who are going around writing and saying, take the good and leave the bad, and they are using incidents of Abu al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari, and they will take these incidents out of context and say to you, look, Abu al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari studied in Deoband, so why can't we study with the Deobandis? And this is exactly what this individual does. He plasters the mistakes of the scholars of al-Hadith and justifies them and makes them permissible, and dupes and deceives the youth, because he has an evil manhaj. He has a manhaj of the Ikhwaniyun, and he wants everybody to accept that manhaj. And he defends all the people of Bid'ah and speaks only against al-Sunnah. And this is an uqubah upon him from Allah, that he praises the people of innovation and rebukes the people of Sunnah. So from the story and the incident of Abu al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari, it becomes clear that don't send your children to the masajid of Ahlul Bid'ah. Don't you yourselves go and attend the lessons of the people of Bid'ah. That even when great scholars went and studied with the people of Bid'ah, they were influenced by the people of Bid'ah. And when the Salaf said to us that don't sit with the people of Bid'ah, don't eat with the people of Bid'ah, don't socialize with the people of Bid'ah, they said this for our own good and protection, to protect our deen from being corrupted, Do you understand what I'm saying? And there is no one greater than Abul Wafa Thana'a Allah Amritsari. For the last 200 years, and probably for the next 200 years to come, Wallahu Alam, of somebody to reach at his caliber, except if Allah wills. And he fell into a great error. So from the story of Thana'a Allah Amritsari, it becomes clear to us that to go and study in the madaris of Ahlul Bidah is not permissible. To send your children to the madaris of Ahlul Bidah is not permissible. Going back to the story. So the Shaykh publishes his tafsirs in the Urdu and the Arabic language. And the ulama read his tafsir in the Urdu and in the Arabic language. And then the ulama start refuting him. What do the scholars do? They refute him openly. The ulama, known as the ulama of Ghaznawiyah, ulama al-Ghaznawiyun, from Amritsar, they publish a refutation against Abul Wafa Thana'a Allah Amritsari, in which they say that they found 40 major errors in his tafsir. And they compile these 40 errors, known as Arba'een, and they send them to the other scholars of Hadith, who testified and said, yes, Thana'a Allah Amritsari has made ta'weel of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we testify to this, and we are with you on this. Abul Wafa Thana'a Allah Amritsari has said. So the scholars, they start refuting Abul Wafa Thana'a Allah Amritsari, all from all over India. Some start speaking about him, warning against him. Others make ta'an upon him, to the extent that some of the scholars, they said that he has left the millah because he has denied and made ta'weel of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there was a great fitna at that time in the Indian subcontinent. That the scholars, they started to refute Abul Wafa Thana'a Allah Amritsari, and this was a time for a trial and a tribulation. And these were the effects of him studying with the people of, until Abul Wafa Thana'a Allah Amritsari, he decided that he would take his case to the great scholars of Hadith, to the majlis of the ulama, and he took his case to them. And he said to them that, judge between me and those who are refuting me. And then there was an agreement that the three major scholars of that time, of the Ahlul Hadith, that they would form a panel of themselves: Abdullah al-Ghazifuri, the Muhaddith, al-Shaykh Abu Tayyib Shamsul Haq al-Azim Abadi, and al-Shaykh Sha'inul Haq al-Farrawarwi. These three scholars were chosen to be a judge between Abul Wafa Thana'a Allah Amritsari and the scholars, the Ghaznavi scholars, who had published a book called the Arba'een in refutation of Abul Wafa Thana'a Allah Amritsari. The Ahlul Hadith would conduct a conference annually every single year. And that conference was known as the All India Ahlul Hadith Conference, which was conducted just about 4 or 5 days ago. 4 or 5 days ago in India, that same conference that started by our scholars was held a few days ago. So this conference at that time, the ulama would gather from all over India, the subcontinent. At that time there was no Pakistan, there was only India. The major scholars would gather from all 4 corners of India, and then they would meet. So this ijtima, or this conference, was held in the month of Shawwal, 1323, corresponding to 1905, May 1905. And the top agenda in that conference was Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari and his tafsir. So the major scholars started to discuss the issue of Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari. And the scholars were divided. There were those who found excuses for Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari. They said he fell into error because he went to Deoband. He hasn't studied the books of Aqeedah with the ulama of al-Hadith, while the others said this is not accepted. He has opposed the Madhhab of the Salaf. For those who said that he should be excused or an excuse found for him, they said that the Shaykh Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari does not reject the attributes of Allah that have been mentioned in the book of Allah and the Sunnah of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he affirms them and believes in them. But his problem is that he also quotes and refers to the way of the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyya. But he believes that Allah has a hand in a manner which befits His Majesty, but he also says that the hand of Allah means qudrah, power. And like that. And another excuse that was done for him, some of the ulama, they said, is because Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayh is always debating. And he debates with the Christians. And he debates with the Hindus. And he debates with the atheists. So he adopts the way of the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyya because they are philosophical arguments. He refers back to philosophy, rhetoric. And because of this he has fell into this error. After that, the three sheikhs, they gave their final verdict. They said that Thana Amritsari should be excused and pardoned. He has erred, no doubt, in 14 places, not 40, as mentioned by the Ghaznavi scholars. And because of this, his asl is to refer back to the book of Allah and the Sunnah of Muhammad Rasulullah. He has not left or departed from the Madhhab of al-Hadith. Not upon their way, not upon their manhaj. The Shaykh Thana Amritsari rahmatullah alayh, he signed to what was said and he agreed. And an agreement was made that in the near future, if the Shaykh was to make a mistake opposing the usul of the muhaddithin, and if he was informed of that mistake, he would instantly refer back and retract and openly denounce that mistake. So this is what happened with regards to Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayh. The Deobandis, if you do not know the history, they will bring you the ta'wilat of Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari, and they will paste it and they will say, look, even the Salafi scholar makes ta'wil of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what the Hanafi Madhhab does. The Hanafi fiqh channel are experts, just like the Jews. يحرفون الكلمة عن مواضعه. يحرفون الكلمة عن مواضعه. Are you with me? So Thana Amritsari rahmatullah alayh, he retracted. But the issue did not stop here. The ulama, some of the ulama were not satisfied. And they continued refuting Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayh. From amongst them was the great Indian Salafi Shaykh from Gujarat, Abdul Jalil As-Samrodi, who wrote a book called Al-Amr al-Rashad, warning against the tafsir of Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari rahmatullah alayh. an amazing book which I read from the beginning till the end. And I found that this Gujarati Salafi Shaykh, the Shaykh of Shaykh Wasil Abbas, and as Shaykh Wasil Abbas says, he was an expert and an imam of the Salafi Aqeedah, who had never come to Hijaz or Najd to study the Salafi Aqeedah with the Arab scholars. So the scholars continued to refute Al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari even after the three major scholars had given decision and had told him to denounce and openly retract. And the issue got out of hand. And the refutations were written. Al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari would defend himself and the scholars would refute him, who were firm upon the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This shows that there is no tala'ub, there is no playing around, there is no such thing as petty or minute when it comes to the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that no one is spared. The refutations continued until the issue from India reached Najd, and it reached King al-Aziz rahmatullah alayh. And King al-Aziz rahmatullah alayh, when he heard about the reality of what had happened, he decided that he now was going to interfere in this issue amongst the scholars and try to unite the al-Hadith scholars. Al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari says, he said, when my tafsir was published, known in the Arabic language called Tafsir al-Quran bi Kalami Rahman for the first time, the Ghaznavi scholars refuted it by calling it al-Arba'een in 40 places where I had made an error. And I tried to respond back to them and refute them by a book called Kalamul Mubin. And then I went to perform Hajj in 1344. Al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari says, I went to perform Hajj in 1344, which is about in the late 30s. And when I went to perform Hajj, I found that this Ba'een was translated into the Arabic language. And the scholars, the Ghaznavi scholars had sent it to the Haramain Sharifain, Makkah and Medina, until the news reached the king, al-Aziz rahmatullah alayhi. And when he found out that Al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari had come for Hajj, and the Ghaznavi scholars had also come for Hajj, the king intervened. And he invited both parties, come and visit him. And he didn't invite them on the basis of that he was a king and that he was going to judge between them. But he invited them as a father who invited his sons who had differed amongst themselves, in order to make sulh. So Al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari attended. The Ghaznavi scholars attended. And the king, he formed a panel of scholars, Arab scholars. Abdullah ibn Bulayhid, Muhammad Rashid Rida, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Latif al-Shaykh, Shaykh Abdullah ibn Hassan al-Shaykh, Shaykh Bahjatu Baytar, Shaykh Abu Zayd al-Misri, and other great scholars were all there present. And the whole issue was discussed once again. And then King Abdulaziz, he said, after discussing to everything, he said to the Qadi, Ibn Bulayhid, he said, write a judgment for me. And write in this the following. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In this blessed gathering, upon the hands of the Imam Abdul Aziz ibn Saud, those who attended from amongst them, Shaykh Maulvi Thanaa'Allāh, and with him Shaykh Abdul Wahid al-Ghaznavi, And both of them requested the Imam al-Aziz to look into the affairs with which that they have differed in the presence of a group of scholars. And it has now been agreed, after looking into this issue, for that which they said, that Shaykh Thanaa'Allāh Amritsari has retracted and taken back, in which he has written in his tafsir, with regards to making ta'weel of istiwa and all the other ayat which are related to the sifat, in following the way of the mutakallimin, and now has decided to follow the Salaf in this affair, and he has admitted that the way of the Salaf is the haqq, and there is no doubt with regards to this. And he has also agreed that from now on in his tafsir, he will not write anything with related to the ta'weel of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with regards to the Shaykh Abdul Wahid al-Ghaznawi and those who are with him and those who spoke and refuted and spoke on the personality of Shaykh Thanaa'Allāh Amritsari and disparaged him and made ta'an upon him, then they have taken that back, and that they will burn this book al-Arba'een that they wrote against him, and that they will take back everything that they said. And now this is a new affair, a new contract, a contract of brotherhood. A contract of brotherhood, which means that they abstain from that which they did in the past. And they have all agreed to this. And they have given the bay'ah to the Imam and the ulama who have witnessed and signed upon this. And all perfect and complete praise with love and veneration is for Allah upon the tawfiq of this. وَهُوَ حَسْبُنَا وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ وَصَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. 1927, 1344, Dhul Hijjah. So from this, my dearest respectful students, King Abdul Aziz was a noble man. A man who, when he saw that his brothers had divided upon this issue, and he saw that if Ahlul Sunnah and Ahlul Hadith are disunited, Ahlul Bidah will become strong. He entered into the issue, and once again he united them. So it becomes clear to us that he retracted and repented from the errors that he fell into. But these Hanafi fiqh devils will come to you and say to you that, look, even the Salafis make ta'weel of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look, Ḥafظه Allah Amritsari in his tafsir makes ta'weel. Unfortunately, what was binding upon the Ahlul Hadith is in their future additions, that they corrected these errors, like Shaykh Safiur Rahman Mubarakpuri did when the Tafsir al-Quran bi Kalami Rahman was published. He edited and removed all those mistakes. Darus Salam published. Jazahullah khair to the Shaykh Safiur Rahman al-Mubarakpuri. And what I have now narrated to you is from the words of Shaykh Safiur Rahman al-Mubarakpuri. So this was the issue with regards to Abu al-Wafa Thanaa'Allāh Amritsari rahmatullah alayhi and his position on Asma wa Sifat. And we know that Abu al-Wafa Thanaa'Allāh Amritsari is pardoned and he is excused, and he affirmed and he made tawbah in the gatherings of the ulama, and the ulama testify to this. So to bring that deviancy which he fell into to us is futile and nonsense. And it's very important for a talibul ilm to know the ulama did not remain silent when somebody fell into error, regardless of his status and his success. in debating and refuting, ulama did not remain silent. You know, you see this guy giving da'wah, he's influential. You say, Akhi, you know, but he's got these errors. No, leave him, don't speak about him, Akhi. He's doing some good. Let him do that good. Let's you know, we'll deal with that after. Look, at least he's saying that. At least he's silencing Tommy Robson. At least he's silencing Fulan ibn Fulan. At least he's speaking out against the Shia. This is not the manhaj of Ahlul Sunnah. This is not the manhaj. The Ahlul Sunnah did not stand back. The man who held the banner of Ahlul Hadith, the flag of Ahlul Hadith, he was taken down. They did not care about his success and his victories in his debates. They took him down. Because the haqq was more beloved to them than the victory of their madhhab. They took him down and made him sign. Things were not rectified until the king and all the ulama, they respected the king. He was like a father to them. So the King al-Aziz and the Ahlul Hadith were very close. In fact, King al-Aziz studied with the Ahlul Hadith scholars in Kuwait. When he left Peninsula and he was in Kuwait in hiding, he met with some of the Indian scholars and studied with them. The Ghaznawis. So ya Ikhwan, understand clearly that all this fitna that Abul Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari fell into, all this grief and misery that he had for over 20 years, was just because he mixed with the people of Bid'ah and became influenced with the people of Bid'ah. Do you understand how dangerous it is to sit with the people of Bid'ah? Salaf used to say that don't sit with the people of Bid'ah because your heart will soften towards them. And you will take their mistakes as being light. That's why we see today in England certain individuals who think that just because they have the title doctor before them, they praise and they sit and they glorify and they move and they venerate anybody who speaks about Islam. What is the distinction between the haqq and the batil? Wallahi, the trial of Thana Allah Amritsari should be an eye-opener. It should be instilled in your hearts how dangerous it is to sit with the people of Bid'ah. If someone like Thana Allah Amritsari, who had a 100% success rate of refuting and defeating people in his debates, Christians, atheists, Hindus, anywhere in the whole of India, anybody that made a challenge, Thana Allah Amritsari said, I will accept your challenge and I will come on my own cost. And he will debate. Until Mirza Ahmad Ghulam Qadiani said that Allah has sent an angel who has revealed revelation to me from Allah, that Allah has said that don't debate with Abul Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari. Allah has prohibited me from debating with Abul Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari. This man, he fell into error. This great scholar fell into error. So by this we come to the end of the biography of the Shaykh. The issue of Abul Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari should be clear to you. Meeting that took place in 1927 in the presence of the King, Abdul Aziz, and the major scholars of Saudi Arabia at that time, many of them Saudis as well as non-Saudis, Egypt and other places. This was documented and signed. And I have a copy of the actual document with the writing and the stamp and the signature of King Abdul Aziz Rahmatullah alayhi. So next time somebody, some Hanafi fiqh channel will come to you and say to you, you know what, Abul Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari, he made ta'wil in Asma wa Sifat, you can smile and say, yes, we know this. We know exactly what happened. We know how ta'wil was made, and we know exactly what happened afterwards as well. And we know what our scholars did. They refuted him. Alhamdulillah, our scholars refuted him because they're not like Deobandis, but they cover up the mistakes of the other sheikhs. No, our scholars, the allegiance and alliance is only with the truth, not with the personalities and the people. So Jazakumullahu khairah, we stop the lesson here. And bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, we shall meet next week on Sunday, where we'll start the first chapter. And the first chapter of the book